I'm Dixie. I am a certified life coach. Today, I want to talk to you about the subject of comparison. I don't understand, why do we always compare with each other? We compare everything. We compare what we look like. We compare what somebody else has versus what we have. We compare somebody's status or their job position, their title. We compare what somebody knows, what somebody does, what somebody has. We compare, if somebody's married or if they're single, or, with wherever we are in those situations. And what I find is comparison is the thief of joy. It robs us of the joy of wherever it is that we are, whatever we look like, whatever position we have, however much we have, however much we know, the status that we're in, whether we're married or single. And I hate that. It's frustrating to me. But the thing I'm realizing is that we all do it. And so, taking all these different things that I've learned, I'm looking at this subject of comparison, and I'm really seeing, how just knowing, just the truth, right? The truth sets us free. And just knowing the truth that this is something that we all do. It's not something that is a flaw or a defect in us. It's kind of like asking, why do you think? We all think. It just happens. We have thoughts that come in and out of our mind all the time. It's not something that's wrong with us. It's not something that we do wrong. I think of, I use the analogy of a garden oftentimes. There's a place inside of us that's like a garden. And I was thinking, if you walked outside into a garden, a literal garden, and you saw weeds growing, you would never stop and say to yourself, you are so stupid. Why did you plant weeds in your garden? You would know weeds grow. That's what they do. They always just grow. And I believe comparison is one of those things, just like thoughts. It just grows. It just happens. It's something we all do. It is not something with you. It's not something that's wrong with you. If you do that, it's not something that, you have to take credit for or responsibility for. But one thing that's really important to know is that we do all respond to that process that happens, that comparison process, and we respond in a few different ways. To me, what I'm really looking at is what is a healthy way to respond to that versus what is an unhealthy way. And, most of my life I responded in a very unhealthy way. I would go in and I would say, as I would, those comparisons would come, I would think, I'm not as pretty as somebody else. I'm not as smart as somebody else. And I would beat myself down internally in that place in me that, that I've learned is so precious. I would actually tear myself down. And I believe that's a very unhealthy approach to things like this. So I want to talk to you about a healthy way to respond when those comparisons come. The first thing that I want you to do, that I want you to see that is a healthy way, is to observe it. To just recognize, hey, I'm comparing. There's something going on inside of me. It typically, for me, like, learning about this stuff, it wasn't always like I just did it again. It was more of I'm not feeling right. Something's uncomfortable. Maybe I'm getting down or depressed or something like that. Let's look at this, right? So then I would start to notice it. And then when I've started to do this, I recognize what a gift that is. Oh my gosh, I see it. I did it. I recognized that this is something that I did. And rather than beating myself up, I can say, hey, there's a weed growing out here. Instead of taking that, you know what I'm saying? Instead of taking responsibility, like, oh, there's something wrong with me because I just did it. I'm saying, I see it now. I see that this is something that's happening. Just observing it, just recognizing it. The second thing is interrupting. And for me, and I use this for lots of different things as I've learned more and more things that are not me. They're not defects in me. They're just things that happen. Just observing that they happen really sets me free. And then the second one is interrupting, recognizing, okay, before this is how I would respond. I would go to this place and this is what I would be thinking or what would be going on inside of me. And so I interrupt those thoughts. I literally have taken ownership of, what I vision as a garden in my mind. I believe this is where we go when we meditate. Yours doesn't necessarily have to be a garden, but that's something that I've, developed within me. But I picture this now. This is my garden, and I don't want any weeds in here. And so when something comes in and it's making me uncomfortable or it's something I don't want, I take that out. And I've taken this pretty serious because as I've observed these different things and realized how they've affected me in the past, I've really taken the ownership and said, you know what? No, and I whatever it takes. I've said right out loud, this is bullshit. I don't want this. It's not living here anymore. I have jumped up and down with my hands in the air. I have, done fist pumps. I've just smiled. I've whatever it is to interrupt that natural process of beating myself up, going down that road. So then the other thing that I do is I start practicing things that I'm learning, things that have really made a difference in my life. Mostly it's asking myself questions, but those questions are very directed and they have an intended purpose. So I will ask myself, what are you focusing on? So in the event of a situation where I'm comparing with someone else, okay, what am I focusing on? And I think I'm focusing on what they have, not what I have. I'm focusing on something outside of myself that is completely out of my control, where I can go back and look at what I have and be grateful for what I have. I ask myself, how do you want to feel? And that, that's something that's kind of enlightening, I think, because you have the choice. Like, how do I want to feel? And if I wasn't thinking that person is prettier than me, or that person is smarter than me, or they're better than me because they have a different role than I do, how would I feel? And just recognizing it's really that thought that's creating that feeling, and I don't have to keep it. I picture opening a bird cage and saying, nope, you can go. I don't want this feeling in my life, or I don't want this weed in my garden. Just really asking myself those questions that kind of direct me in the path that I want to go. And what I find as I do that is then I can start being grateful for what I do have, for who I am, for all the amazing, awesome things that I have to be grateful for. When you are healthy, your focus is not so much on, like your defects or what you need to fix, but it's kind of an ownership, taking a responsibility for where you are, and then really making those decisions, making those determinations of where you want to go, how you want to respond. I don't think there's anything wrong with comparing. I don't think that there's something, innately wrong with us, but I think as we look at those kind of things and see them for what they are, the truth, right? When we see the truth of it, then we can respond differently. So for me, what I'm definitely doing today as I see those things is I'm taking them as learning opportunities. I started creating videos, as you know, and posting them. And then I started watching other people's videos and and started comparing. And what I found is I really like how this person does that. That doesn't mean I'm not doing it right. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with what I'm doing, but hey, I can learn from that. I can take what somebody else is doing and I can learn from it. And it's such a different thought process, such a different way of responding to something, and it sets you free. As I've learned at it, these different things, I can actually celebrate when I see somebody else doing something well. When I see somebody that's beautiful, I like the way they do their hair, I like the way they do their makeup. I can celebrate that instead of coming back and being negative within myself. I can say, I'm going to try that next time, or taking it as a learning experience and taking it as, man, look at all these different ideas, all these different ways of doing things, and how amazing that is. And that they don't, put me down. I think that's a lot of why we treat each other so awful, is because we're trying to get a step up, right? We're trying to feel like we're okay and we're better than the next person. So, when we start that process, it really creates a negative thing, and it doesn't diminish me in any way. So, once again, I recognize it and I can say, okay, here's the truth. These just happen. We all just compare. How am I going to respond to it? I see that it's happening, and that in itself is an amazing gift, to just be able to observe, hey, this is something going on, and now I see it. Maybe I didn't see it for a long time, but I see it today. And interrupting, I'm not going to do it like that way anymore. I'm going to respond in a way that's going to help me to be better and help life to be better, which is going to ultimately help how you treat everyone else in the world. And then just those practices. Hey, what am I focusing on? What do I want to think about? And really, over and over, as I've experienced these changes in myself, I find more things to be grateful for every day. Every day I am just amazed at all of the things that I have, gifts that I have, that I overlooked because I was always comparing with someone else. So I just hope that this blesses you, gives you something to think about today. And I do have a coaching business. If you're interested in connecting in that way, my website, peacewithincoaching.com. My email is dixiemay@live.com. Feel free to leave a comment. I would love to connect with you. Have a great day.